So South Africa has had its latest bout of scandals, and it's in the Ministry of Higher Education. We have now recently seen the resignation stroke sacking stroke something of the Minister of Higher Education, Khabane, who left her post and being replaced by Buti Manamela, who has been the deputy minister there since I think the portfolio was created. But this all goes around malfeasance within the higher education ministries and especially within the SETAs. An organisation that's been following it very closely has been OUTA, and joining us today, Wayne Duvenage from OUTA. Wayne, welcome back to the State of the Nation.
Yeah, nice to be there.
So you really have been on this story for a while, and it's ironic that the minister seems to have gone more because she misrepresented who was on their council as opposed to the real issue, which is corruption within the SETAs.
Yeah.
You've been sort of monitoring a lot of that.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So, credit must be given to Rudy Haneke, our lead investigator or senior project manager in the space, who reports into Stefanie Fick. And this is what OUTA is about. It's about teamwork and about great people that do this digging. And just to recap quickly, in 2018, 3 whistleblowers came to us from Services SETA and exposed to us what was going on. And from there, things have just escalated. And as we reported on different issues, more whistleblowers came through. And then it went into NSFAS, the National Student Aid Finance Scheme. And that's also under higher education. And where we saw incredible elaborate plans to hijack additional revenue streams, which you and I would have paid for, through student accommodation, through student payment systems, and the same companies followed Ndile Nongogo, who was at Services SETA, and then he was CEO there. And what has actually unfolded, Mark, is this immense network. And it's very clever. Well, it's not so clever, but when you start digging, all you do is you put certain people that you want to make sure that the controls are in place into the boards. So you control the chairperson and the boards, and they appoint the CEOs and the CFOs. And away you go. It's like a race. And then it's right. What can we do? Well, let's put in a new ERP system. Oh, let's move offices. So let's find somebody who owns the offices that we can rent at above normal rates. Let's now move those offices. In one case at NSETA, 14 million rand to move 10 kilometers, an office that, imagine what you can build just for that. This was just drywalling and desks and maybe a few new desks and some cabling. Anyway, I want to go too deep into the examples. There are lots of them. And these guys have been chowing, eating, scoffing themselves on millions upon millions of rands for the last 10 years. And it hasn't stopped to this day, this abuse of power. It's just incredible. And so we have a new minister in Khabane who came in the 7th administration in June last year. And we reach out because we'd been reaching out to Blade and Zamande saying, something has to stop here. And we're exposing, nothing happens. New minister comes in, the portfolio is split into 2. Blade gets a small portion, science, technology and innovation, and the big elephant being higher education. And Khabane comes in and she's just handed this absolute mess. I don't think she realized what she was walking into. I think if she knew what she knows now, she probably might have said, no, thank you. Anyway, so a year into this, we do meet with her 6 months in, and we say exactly that. Minister, you've probably inherited the most corrupt network in this country, in government. And we go about explaining what she needs help. So we say, well, your boards are coming up for renewal. This is the time. Get in the right people. And the right oversight, finding the right CEOs, and lovely opportunity because lots of these CEOs have got findings, auditor general findings. Again, easy to remove them. Their time's also up. Great time to clean up the SETAs. And what happens? Well, just very briefly, the list is given to her. These are the people. Those are connected people, political people. big outrage from ourselves, politicians and everybody. List is withdrawn. She advises Parliament, wasn't really, well, it was her committee, and then there's some misleading of Parliament. Well, she now has to, lie in her grave there, that she fall on her sword, so she gets removed. And now you have Buti Manamela coming in, who has been the deputy there for some time. So he knows this playing field. And now our wish and our hope is to engage quite quickly, because what's unfolding now, and we've been giving a number of interviews with whistleblowers, is this abuse of power in these SETAs is now out of control, and the plundering just continues. It's just madness.
So Wayne, if it's quite ironic then, you've mentioned this absolute mess within many of these SETAs, and that it's kind of become this place of patronage for friends and deployees of the ANC. It's quite ironic that this minister in Khabane is sort of being done not for that, but for lying to Parliament.
Yeah, it is. It is. And if she hadn't done that, she'd probably still be in this position. But I guess the jury's out as to whether she was going to be effective or not, because, she's. I think she was just out of her depth. This was a mountain, and this is a deer in the headlights type of thing. You need somebody with real moral courage and civil courage to go in there and clean up, or just something has to happen. And we've had these discussions, and I think this is, we can't carry on down the same old road anymore.
Yeah. So now, Wayne, you've done a lot of work because I suppose the nature of what OUTA does, where you try, the organization that undoes tax abuse, you start getting into a specific sector, and then a whole lot of people come to you because they see you working in that sector, and it seems like that's what happened to you. OUTA started to work on a lot of what the goings on within the SETAs, and a lot of whistleblowers have come your way.
So it almost seems, Mark, that that's all we're doing, but we're not. We're doing a lot of stuff still in energy and Eskom and the transport department. But this has consumed quite a lot of time, because we are a limited team, and a lot of whistleblowers have come forward, and it's a lot of good, big corruption.
But the question that I'm asking, or that starts, I suppose we should ask more and more in South Africa, is the SETAs themselves have failed at their basic function, which is to build development, to technical growth and so on. And as well as being this place where all the money is stolen. They get about 21 billion rand of our money, ladies and gentlemen. Our money goes to the SETAs.
And another 5 billion to the National Skills Fund, all fed from that Skills Development Levy. So let's say 25 billion rand a year. Yeah,
of money that, you could have about 25 national dialogues with that money, I'm just saying. But is there any hope for the SETAs, or is it time for us to consider whether the whole idea of a SETA is applicable to South Africa?
I think it's a good question, and it is time to actually unpack this from the beginning. I think we all sort of felt that if the business world, as we were moving into our new democracy, there was a lot of skills development and upliftment required, even before NSFAS came along. So the higher education was in this space. I think it was part of education, and this whole idea of, there's this gap between school leavers and moving into specialized or training for specialized industries, and then you got universities and technicons. And that money could be recouped by business through specific learnerships and programs. So the idea sounds good. But if you ask the business world today, they've checked out. Most of them have checked out. It's not worth their time, the effort. And I think we are at a place where we've got to ask ourselves this question. That 25 billion rand could be put to much better use. So it's either a revamp of the SETAs, not just a dress over, because I sincerely believe right now that even if you fix the governance issues and the corruption, you'd still be asking the question, what are we really doing with this 1% of payroll, this 25 billion a year? Couldn't we get a better return on that investment for the country? And so the short answer to your question is, it's time to wipe the slate clean and think and have a summit, government, civil society, business. What do we do differently here? Is it possibly scrapping it completely and doing something else with those funds, or rejigging the entire model? Because right now, it's not working.
Yeah. And because I mean, obviously we had an increase mooted for VAT to raise, just more than double this money. And there was a life before SETAs, and people did get trained. That's all that I know, and we've had many discussions on that. Yeah. Wayne, so now we've got a new minister in place, Buti Manamela. Mm-hmm. He doesn't come into this thing from nowhere, right? He was sitting there at the right-hand side, at Blade Nzimandi's drinking hand side, as the Deputy Minister of Higher Education. He doesn't, certainly, other than being sort of the second most renowned communist after Blade Nzimandi, he doesn't seem to have any much to him. Or am I reading it wrong? Is there something there that I haven't seen?
Yeah, I think we've got to give him a bit of the benefit of the doubt. Let me put it this way. When you're the minister, you have the power. When you're the deputy minister, there's very little. You get given your areas that you need to go and focus on, and off you go and keep quiet. I think there was a time when he was a little bit more vocal, or had some views and opinions on matters that put Blade Nzimandi's nose out of joint, and he quietly crept back into his box and carried on. Now he's the minister. Now he's in this position of power, and he knows exactly what's going on. He's seen our reports. If he hasn't, he's been on another planet. He understands what's going on in this cesspool of corruption. And it's under Blade Nzimandi's watch that this network has been allowed to develop. So he's got an opportunity to fix it, in which case he's going to have somebody like Blade Nzimandi tapping him on the shoulder and saying, what are you doing? Where are you going? Because Blade hasn't stepped up and said, this corruption in these SETAs is unacceptable. This must not happen. Why is this happening? He's been very quiet. So why do you think that is? That he knows stuff. I mean, he appointed all those chairpersons of those boards that were outgoing. He's made sure that some of those people were put into those CEOs positions. We know that. He knows that. He knows that we know that as well. His name comes up in recordings, secret recordings, where Ernest Corso had to eventually step down from his position. So there's a lot to be answered for by the previous dispensation, or the previous minister, of which he was the deputy. So he's got an opportunity to change that, to fix the SETAs, or to deal with the wrath of business. Because here's a scenario that I want us to paint. Can you imagine now? Business is a big role player at Business for SA, and a lot of the trying to fix this country. Here's where I would like to appeal to business leadership and BUSA and others. It is time that their members, because this is where business has power, to start saying to the minister, unless this is fixed, we are going to call for, and potentially even in the courts of law, because you're not delivering, a review of the skills development levy. And between now and then, maybe we should just say, isn't it time to withhold that? Now, I know it's a whole tax issue, and there's a lot of complications, but those discussions need to start happening in earnest. And that's what gets government to sit up and say, what are we going to do if we don't get 25 billion rand? Well, what are you doing with the 25 billion? Because nothing will really change. We're not necessarily going to lose a lot of skills development, are we? If not, you're not doing it properly. Maybe half it. Maybe to 0.5% of the salary bill. But something has to change, and business has power here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, because Minister Manamela is going to come in now to an environment that he's been part of, said nothing, with a massive spotlight on him, because of Khabane's poor handling of the situation and of herself. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see, because because now we're finally going to get to see, I suppose, in action, what does a deputy minister do? I mean, because if a guy comes in there as if he's never been there, he's lying.
Yeah.
right? If he comes in there with the plan to fix it up, it means that maybe being a deputy minister is a good sort of way in. And we haven't seen many successful deputy ministers to minister transitions. So, Buti Manamela, we're going to be watching this very closely. Wayne, I would like to move the conversation to something else that I know that you mentioned that this isn't the only thing that you've been working on. You recently wrote about some of the abuse of funds in the road accident fund.
Yeah. The Road Accident Fund has been, in the news for the wrong reasons for many years now, and even pre-dating Collins Letsoala's tenure. It got into a mess. If you go back as far as 2006, it was washing its own face back then. It was covering its costs, and then we saw around about 2008, Jacob Zuma comes into power, and the same playbook just playing out. Wherever there are big pots of money that can be abused, this is where it happens. And we saw the operating costs of the Road Accident Fund just go up from 5 billion to 40 billion rand, or 28 billion rand in a few years, and then right up to 45 billion rand per annum, I'm talking about. And so they tried to escalate the fuel levies to keep track, and they just couldn't keep pace, and had the fuel levy, had they been able to keep pace or contain all of these costs to inflation-related costs, well, the fuel levy I'm talking about the Road Accident Fund portion of the fuel levy, would be 200 billion rand less spent today over the last 13 years than it was, 200 billion rand. So again, this is an example of a government that keeps throwing money and people at the problem instead of saying, hold on, this escalation is out of line, what's going on, and bring in the experts and contain it. They will say, but the lawyers and everybody were coming at us. Well, how do you think MyWay or Outsurance or these Santam, these insurance companies, they handle the same thing, fictitious claims and rogue claims. You manage your system through systems and processes and AI and audits. That's how you run a claim system. And the Road Accident Fund is a claim system. They didn't, they just lost control. Why? Because government, that's notorious for losing control of administration. Why? Because you don't put the right people in, the expertise, you put your cadres in, your mates, and you go and plunder. So the Road Accident Fund is just another example of how wrong it goes, and that's 50 billion rand a year. So we're talking 25 billion into skills development levies, into the SETAs, to 50 billion rand through fuel levies charged, 45 billion to 50, now into a Road Accident Fund, which we believe, if it was well managed, would be about 25 billion now. It could have been. It's just, and those are just two. Now you just have to.
Yeah, just multiply. But now, just staying with the Road Accident Fund, this falls under the Ministry of Transport.
Yeah.
Barbara Creasy, unsuccessful in Gauteng, made a minister nationally. Another one that won't come on the show. Does she look like she's got a handle on this?
I think Barbara Creasy is the best transport minister we've had. We've had 7 in the last 12 years. So we're very careful not to paint everyone with the same brush. I do think there's a lot of room for improvement, for engaging. Now, we've been knocking on the doors of ministers for a long time, and barring 1 or 2 doors being opened when the pressure got too hot for Fikile Mbalula, for instance. It doesn't happen often, but Barbara Creasy did open the door and listened, and it resulted in a tender on the driver's license card account where we were working with whistleblowers to be halted, calling in the Auditor General, and it's allowed a number of things to start flowing. But we do believe that door needs to be opened wider, because the President has said, engage with civil society. Why? Well, we've got many examples of road vehicle testing centre corruption. It's rife throughout the country. There's a whole new number plate system that Gauteng's trying to introduce. There are serious concerns around that. The list is quite long. The Road Traffic Management Corporation, by the way, we're in court to go and get information which you and I are supposed to have. Just how did they arrive at a decision on how government, or how Road Traffic Management Corporation decided on increasing, listen to this, the fee you pay to have a change of ownership on your vehicle. when you go into the office, into the driving testing center with the paperwork, the manual process, it costs, might be out by a bit, 150 Rand. But when you do it online, you pay nearly 3 times that price. Now imagine your bank saying, no, come into the branch and do your transactions, and if you want to do it online, we're going to charge you 3 times. That's the complete reverse of what happens in the real world. The RTMC is a money-making empire. So is the RTIA, the Road Traffic Infringement Agency, is trying to introduce R2 for years. So I'm digressing a little bit, but this playbook, it just plays out everywhere. How do we make money out of people? And then how do we plug in all the spending opportunities? And how do we put our cadres into those positions so that we can all eat? Now, you know, the Road Traffic Management Corporation CEO recently fired or suspended. Not surprised. But they won't meet with us. And all we want to do to the Road Accident Management Corporation and RTAs, we want to help you. We had a conference laid out with the RTIA. I'm going back a number of years on R2. And we brought in all the role players, which they didn't do. The Road Freight Association, AA, fleet companies, everything, to say, these are our concerns. They just didn't rock up. After accepting our invitation, they just didn't rock up at the conference. And so we gathered all the information and gave it to them. They didn't listen. So R2 will fail. Not because we will it. The same thing with e-tolls. This is going to fail. It failed. We had to push it, but it failed. So sadly, government has this notion and idea that because we've put it into law, it will work. It will just happen. I don't know when they're going to learn.
Yeah.
It's just madness.
Well, Wayne Duvenage from OUTA, I think there's 2 things that we can do to help you. One is continue to get you on the show so that you can ventilate these things, that people can hear what the cases are that you are picking up. And also to anybody that's watching, if you want to help OUTA continue the work that they're doing, and they're doing fantastic work, go to their website, become a contributor. It is funded by people like you and I making a contribution to OUTA, and they are doing God's work in this country, because believe me, at this stage, there's not one political party that cares about your money, because if they cared about it, they would be doing it differently. Right now, OUTA is one of those very thin lines between us and a complete catastrophe in this country. So, let's support them.
Thanks, Mike. And just also say that we are looking into this whole solar issue, Eskom solar tax, solar fees, solar whatever. We've got some serious concerns. We've reached out to them. We want to meet. They've acknowledged that we want to meet, but they haven't set up a time with us. We are really worried about what they're trying to do there. So watch this space. Okay,
so ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Thank you so much for joining us on the State of the Nation today. To Wayne and OUTA, keep up the good work. Subscribe to the State of the Nation, support Pace Car Rental, and we'll see you again on the State of the Nation. Thank you for joining us today.
When it comes to getting around South Africa, Pace Car Rental makes it easy. Whether it's a quick run to the airport, a month-long rental for business, or a vehicle to help grow your hustle, Pace has the right wheels right when you need them. With a wide range of reliable cars, vans and bakkies, flexible rental terms, and friendly service you can count on, South Africans trust Pace to keep them moving. Plus, use promo code SONA and get a special discount on your next rental, because every journey deserves a head start. Reliable, affordable, proudly local. Pace Car Rental.